Awesome. Okay, let's get started, guys. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight for the third and final Technical Official Development webinar for 2022. As we move out of lockdowns and into more face-to-face scenarios these days, we'll be doing less and less of these webinars, but we know that they've been very successful and very welcomed by people over the last couple of years. So we thought it necessary to do some more. So thanks again for joining us, taking the time out of your week, and thank you most of all to Darryl for joining us to present tonight. So first off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which you and I stand today, and I pay my respects to all the First Nations people and our community elders. Like our other webinars, this Zoom presentation is in a meeting format, so you do have the ability to unmute yourself, but we would request that you type your question into the chat and we'll get to them as we go along. If Darryl asks you for further information on a question or something, then you can unmute and talk then to save some time. Basically, I think Darryl is very accomplished in this area. Perhaps a few of these attendees here have heard you speak before, but do you mind giving us a very brief rundown about yourself before we start? As I'm sure you can do a better job than myself, and then you can get straight into the presentation itself.
Thanks, Josh. I must be going okay because we've got participants adding, not minusing. So that's good already from my perspective. Hello, everyone. For those people that don't know me, my name's Darryl Durham. Very quickly, because we want to talk about the strategies. My background is that I've worked in sport for about the last 38 years, 17 years at the Sports Commission, where I first met John Kepi, and I'll tell you a little bit about that story a bit later. In more recent years, prior to COVID, the last 12 years, I've been consulting to national sporting organisations in officiating portfolios, which includes Swimming Australia. So going back a few years, I did write the Technical Officials Learner Guides and have been involved with the National Technical Committee, and also presently working with Victorian Swimming on their new project to do with officiating, which we'll talk about a little bit later. 12 months ago, Swimming Australia asked me to sit down and look at some strategies to go forward, which I'll share with you tonight. But sort of that's my background, officiating consultant across a number of sports. Presently, I'm working a lot with basketball ACT and recruiting, retaining, engaging officials in that space, which I'll share some stories with. So, Josh, was that 22 seconds?
23, just went.
Okay, mate. All right. Let's begin. So strategies for recruiting and retaining technical officials. It is very difficult in officiating Australia-wide to get more officials in. There has only ever been one organisation that I worked with, which was Tennis Australia, where they said that they had 500 officials that they couldn't use in Victoria. And I said, any sport in Australia would love to take those 500 people on board. And why they had 500 people was that those 500 wanted to work at the Australian Open. And they were just targeted on working there, and they just could not be supported to get through the system because they already had a number of people working the Australian Open. So that is the only sport that I know in recent years prior to COVID that had a oversupply of officials. Everyone else is really struggling. In my situation, our competitions here in the ACT expanded by 180 teams in the last 18 months. And my task is to be able to supply 2 referees per game, and we just can't do that because we can't develop them quick enough. So everyone is really competing to get officials into their organisation. Going back to May last year, when Swimming Australia asked me to do some transformational thinking with them, This slide came up from Ben Ramsey. And this is about, if we do nothing, this is what we're going to look like with our technical officials, and we look at the recruitment. So there's not going to be much recruitment. So therefore, we have to be looking to the right-hand side where we're looking at aggressive recruitment and technological innovation. So this is really coming from Swimming Australia last year. Some of you may have seen this, some of you may not have. So I'm just sharing this quickly with you. So it does show us that we do have a problem if we do nothing. Okay, so the turnaround strategy that is being discussed is about attract, develop, community, and automate. So if we look at the attract, we're looking at parent recruitment program and young officials. Now let's talk about young officials. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, around that time, some of you may remember John Kepi. Now, I met with John Kepi at the Penrith Panthers Leagues Club that particular evening, and he said to me, Darryl, we have an officiating problem because we've got an aging workforce that will be aging out, and we need the young'uns to come through. And I said, so define young'uns for me, John. And he turned around and he said, well, the young'uns, Darryl, the 40 and 50-year-olds, we need the young'uns to come through the system. And I said, well, mate, we need those young'uns to come through the system, but we also need younger people to come through the system as well. Swimming Australia was looking at a nationwide network of mentors and assessors, and this is all work in motion still. They want to refresh the pathway, and they want to basically start moving swimming resources into the 21st century. We've got to galvanise our existing network, have a digital community that's enabled to be able to use digital environments. And we've got to, as all sports do, positive culture, rewards and recognition. And we've got to make more automation within the officiating of swimming. And I'll talk about that in my last slide tonight. So it's not just your particular club, it's not your particular environment, it's not your particular group of officials, it's nationwide. So in light of that, we were asked to look at some recruitment strategies. So again, this is at a national level. So first of all, who are we going to target? Well, first of all, parents. There's not many people from sport that just walks in off the street going, I want to be a technical official for swimming, or I want to become an NRL referee. Most people have some affiliation, either through friendship groups or basically through their own love of the sport or their children being involved. So again, I'm very quickly going through what we talked about at a national level so we can drill down to a local level. So who do we need to engage? We need to engage the parents. And as the comment I've got there, we've got to drag them out of the stands. We have to use them to assist. We've got to have recruitment drives prior to events. There's a duty for these parents to work with the club, and also their duty to family participants to assist. When do we do it? Prior to events, at events and at clubs. The important thing is the engagement has to be almost immediate. So we can't do a recruitment drive 2 or 3 weeks before an event. It's usually a week before, so they get some knowledge if we can get people there, and then we get them straight into the environment. The National Rugby League was doing a project, or they were actually delivering their Level 0 course, which is Introduction to Officiating. It was a 4-hour course. Then those participants had to do 10 units online before they fronted up on a Saturday to shadow a referee. The transition from the face-to-face to on-field was 0 because of the 10 weeks online. So there has to be a certain amount of immediacy once you get people into your technical officiating community to get them practically working, whether it's shadowing someone, whether it's making observations, etc. The other group that we targeted would be former swimmers. Now, the important thing with this former swimmer is to be able to closely work with swim coaches to find out where swimmers are, or as we're going to say, athletes are, and whether they're going to continue or whether they are going to transition out of their active swimming. And this is where you've got to talk with swim coaches to be able to start targeting people as they're transitioning out of being in a performance pathway or an ongoing participation pathway. So we want to maintain their interest in sport. We want to promote their state representation, even Australian representation. Again, these are comments made for the national level. And we can fast track solutions for appointments as well if they know their stuff. And even start talking about dollars. So not all transitioning swimmers can become commentators and or coaches, but there is a third option, a technical official. People seeking new communities was another group that we thought that could be engaged. And at a national level, discuss options with Veteran Affairs, Soldier On movement, engage the police force where there's forced retirements. There's other sports and off-season, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And also certain tertiary institutions have community hours that their students need to do. At the moment, I have an intern that's required to do 250 hours to successfully meet the requirements of the course that he's actually doing. So I've got him off doing officiating, an officiating program, in fact, an app. So there needs to be some strategies developed for people seeking new communities or transitioning from their existing community, whether it be defence or police force or other services, into the community. The last group we targeted was people seeking the dollar. So that was a point in question whereby some sports pay, other sports don't. And up until this point, working with swimming, it's only been basically a stipend or per diem that a lot of people have actually been paid. But that could be an area whereby we move towards where we actually start paying some dollars for people to be engaged. I call it the McDonald's Uber strategy, which we'll talk a little bit later. So this is what I came up with May last year, based at the national level. So let's look at this starting now. Let's drill this down to your local area, local environment, local group of officials that you work with. First of all, I'm calling this a simplified framework of the holistic look. So first of all, a lot of people, when they're recruiting people, look at, engaging and maintaining people, look at three things: recruit, train, and retain. An important part there is recruit, train, continuous engagement, then retain. And that's what we're looking at with this holistic simplified framework. Now, you could all be sitting there going, I've got enough to do. I'm saying this is probably about a page and a half of notes that you need to write yourself based in your own environment on how we are going to attract people to your environment. And we've got to maintain, are we doing effective recruiting? Are we training them effectively from Swimming Australia down through New South Wales to our local people? Are we then engaging them? And how are we engaging them? Are we providing development opportunities? Are we supplying social interaction for them? Have we asked them why they've become or want to become a technical official? And then we look at the retention. I was working with the AFL many years ago, and they're saying, look, you know, we've got about 10,000 people coming into our system every year as officials in community sport. I said, that's fantastic. They said, but we're losing about 9,000 out the other end, or 8,500. So the retention, or that holistic progression from recruit, train, engage, and retain is really important. It's just not the numbers that come through the front door, it's also the numbers that stay in the house. So I talk about the technical official product. And again, I want you to use this more as a tick and flick sheet. So the technical official product, what does it look like in your own environment? Okay, so we have events operating, we have a national curriculum operating, but what you have to do at your local level is make it accessible for people. You have to make it achievable for people. You have to make it inclusive and diverse. There has to be a very strong sense of community as people are joining something to involve themselves. There has to be recognition for their work, especially when most officials or technical officials are either doing it free of charge or for a stipend as it goes as you further up the pathway. There has to be a supportive environment, and there has to be clear pathways. So if someone comes up to me and goes, would you like to be a technical official? My first response would be no. But what we've got to be able to do is have a framework that sits under that question and work out how we can engage people and what we can offer them. So, first of all, in our local areas and local communities, we have to identify barriers to participation. Most people will come back and go, time. I don't have time. There was one of the largest soccer clubs in Australia, single soccer clubs, was based here in Canberra. And they didn't have enough volunteers, right from coaches, administrators, and referees in football, as in the world game football. So they basically said any volunteer would be given a $50 cash towards their registration fees. They get $50 off their son or daughter's registration fees. If not, everyone would have to pay the total amount of money. So they ended up having less volunteers because everyone took the $50 option of keeping it in their fees. So it'd be just a drop-off, pick-up situation. So that strategy actually backfired. Instead of giving them a $50 bonus, everyone basically took, I don't care about the $50, you can keep it as long as I don't have any responsibility. And that type of, what can I say, that type of attitude does not help to build communities. A thing that officials don't do well, including technical officials, is share success stories, even at the local level, local hero level. We've got to showcase our technical official community through social media. We have to get people in our local areas to be social media savvy and develop some resources so that we can engage people. We've got to make sure that getting involved is simple. And to me, simplicity is based on 3 clicks with any web or internet environment. I get criticised heavily at work because I go, if it takes more than 3 clicks, it's not good software to find what I want to find. We've got to create different messaging for different participation levels. Are the people that you're targeting basically there to support their kids, or are they there because they're an ex-swimmer? And whether they want to be on the participation or performance pathway. To me, any officiating environment's like building a squad or a team. We've got to recruit people to come in to be part of a squad to achieve officiating at an event, to achieve supplying technical information so we improve swimming. We have to sell the active participation with your child or children. So if it's a parent, how well do you want to be involved with the participation of your son or daughter in this particular sport, or your child in this sport? We need assistance in doing this. So John, I'm going to open up to the floor now, either via chat or audio, about what are some of the strategies people have used that have been successful, or have seen in other sports that have been successful in their local environments. Has anything come through, Josh?
not in terms of strategies. If someone does want to quickly unmute, maybe that's quicker because it might take a little bit to type up a strategy. I'll just let someone, if someone wants to speak, I will let them do so now. While we wait, in case people are typing, we did have, and it pretty much, this echoes what you were mentioning earlier, Darryl. John had written that he spoke with David McKeon recently, who is an ex-Australian swimmer. And yeah, we can see this in the chat here that he's just started coaching. That he didn't consider becoming a TO because it took too long. So, so yeah, I mean, hopefully that can be bared in mind when people here do come up with some strategies.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be very accessible and has to be easily accessible. And I mean, that was part of the strategy we were talking about, is that how can we get the people at the grassroots level to become involved, and it's not too rigorous for them, for the environment in which they're going to begin in the environment. We'll keep moving on, mate.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so some recruitment ideas. All right, first one. And you've all done this and will continue to do this, but they may be a little bit different. When my boys were going through swim school and then to some squad training, parents used to be sitting on the sideline on the seats around the pool, and they were talking. More recently, I've been told by family and relatives, etc., a lot of the parents sit on the side now on their telephones. So there's not even that interaction. So that's what I've been told. So basically, what about we develop some form of online video promo? So while the parents are online, they can actually access this straight up. So it's a quick video promo, which you can shoot with your own iPhone. That's how simple it is. And put it on the local club's Facebook or whatever means of social media they're using, and start engaging people from that one about and talking about the investment in their children's swimming future. So I'm calling that a bit of a tech it up, because a lot of people now are putting so much time into their telephones and reading things. Again, don't negate the approach or bringing parents together, but also looking at some form of very basic online video promo that can be loaded up on local club sites. I think that we've got to be able to make that sort of transition by asking people through a number of different avenues to participate. And again, a real simple response at the bottom. I am interested, and just have that up, and they click the button and they can go to another area where they can do some registration. Point number one. Point number two, we actually ask the kids to ask their parents. I remember my son asking me to do a few things, and you really can't say no. So again, through the tech it up, through the face-to-face, and then also through the children that are swimming, or the adults, or the actual adolescents that are swimming, to go and say, look, we've got to recruit, we need more people. This is an interesting one. And this is a strategy that I'm beginning next year. So what we're actually doing next year is, any of our players are in our squads, so in the under 14 age group, they're actually doing rule sessions as part of their training. So what we're doing is we're establishing a young person's rule sessions as part of their training. Number one, the actual swimmers begin to learn the rules. And number two, we may be able to get some young people transitioning. keep their swimming, but then after their events, whatever, we can actually get them involved in the rest of the events that are occurring. So it's a twofold strategy. One, they improve their knowledge of their swimming, and two, we start then hooking them in for a junior program. Some people turn around and say, well, we really need adults there. Well, eventually these kids will become adults. We've had to put a break on who we accredit as referees. When I came into the job, they were allowing 10-year-olds to officiate basketball. Again, it was at the under 10 level, but I've changed it to 13-year-olds, or people have to be turning 13 the year they do their entry into their formal accreditation. So that's something that you could think about and work in with club coaches. And I think what has to happen is that in all sports, there has to be a stronger relationship between technical officials / referees and coaches. Now, this one's a little bit out of left field. Approach schools with swimming programs to conduct technical officiating training. Last year, I did a similar thing, but what happens is you actually go to schools and you look at schools that may be in your area, your region, that have a strong swim program, and then approach the school to conduct technical official training, whether it be before or after any of the schools. And again, if there's a GPS school in your region in New South Wales, they're the types of schools that you could go to, looking at recruiting not only students, but also teachers coming from there. Alternatively, this year, I've gone into what we're calling our basketball schools referee development program, where we actually look at schools that have enrichment programs. And these enrichment programs are basically activities that schools do maybe every second Friday afternoon during term 3 or term 4. So I was thinking outside the box. And again, you go, Darryl, you're way out there at different times, but have a combination of swimming and technical official fun stuff, as I call it. So you bring students into a swimming pool, and again, this would be with local clubs as well as yourself, where they mimic small meets. So you have the fun stuff like starting, judging, all those types of things happening, and then getting the other students to, a quick 10 meter swim or a start off the blocks, etc., etc. So what we do is we mimic a small meet, and each of the kids rotate through a technical official's role. Again, you're sort of saying, Darryl, well, you're working with schools, but I really think that we've got to start engaging younger generations coming through the system. Okay. The other strategy is also recruiting parents, uncles, and aunties to make or to be involved as a technical official, and then that offsets some fees for families within their club. And again, all these strategies are working within or working with coaches, it's working with families, it's working with the club. No longer can we be in isolation. Even my sport, this year's the first year, last weekend, where we had the referee awards with all the high performance awards. Before, it was two separate things. So it's about engaging within the swimming community, as you know yourself. We start talking about bringing a friend to an event. So showcase the job and the community, and you do get the best seats in the house, whether it's a local meet, whether it's a regional meet, or whether it's a state meet. So it's about bringing a friend to an event. showcase the job, showcase the community, have the best seat in the house, and then also organise a bit of a social function that particular evening or afternoon or that Saturday morning. Okay, so you've got to be able to sell your product. Your product is technical officiating. And you have everything from your local club competition to your regional, right up to state, right up to nationals, and then international. So there's a complete pathway that people can choose to be on. I always talk about the X and Y axis. So we have the vertical axis, which is our performance pathway. So you can start at 0, and then if you are talented enough, you can get right up to FINA accredited. Or the participation is that you want to be the very best technical official in your local area. And that's what you've got time for, and that's what you've got to do. Not everyone has to be on a performance pathway. This is an interesting one where I've got Approach, Lions Club, Rotary Club, Men's Shed, SES as volunteers to help. Why I put that in is because a lot of those people already have a commitment to community, but why not work with the local people in your area to see if people are interested in actually doing something a little bit different, learning a new skill or sets of skills, interacting in new environments. If we look at the SES, that was an interesting observation I made. So my son was actually playing rugby league at one time, and there was always problems recruiting volunteers as ground personnel or ground managers. So his club actually contracted the SES to manage the ground, which meant set up the environment. If there's disputes, basically solve the disputes. And what the club did was actually then gave a donation to the local SES. Now, I thought that was a really good strategy of community organisations working together. And again, outside of the box, are there SES people that would be interested in working as a technical official in your local area? Have you approached the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, the Men's Shed, all those people that already invest in community? The strategy for reciprocal officiating is interesting also. So do we approach local officiating organisations to see whether in a particular off season they want to come across and be a technical official and work as an official in another sport during their off season? Some officials turn around and go, no, my off season is my off season. And then you have the diehard officials that basically turn around and go, look, I want to officiate 12 months of the year, but my sport only goes for 6. Or I'm in a sport that it only goes for major events. Could be badminton, could be tennis, etc. So I call that reciprocal officiating agreement, where you work with local clubs in your area to sort of say what you can do. And the same thing occurs that you may turn around and have some type of administrative role or volunteer role with the club that has supplied you also with officials during your peak season. Josh, I see some chat room movement. What have we got there?
Sorry, guys, just on mute. So we had, when you were talking about parents who would often be sitting in the stands or sitting around just on their phone. We had John who wrote that so the Meet Mobile app is very commonly used amongst the swimming community. So that could be an idea of, where you target those parents with some sort of promotional video. That would obviously have to be done at a maybe more of a higher level. We wouldn't expect clubs to go out and create an ad and get Meet Mobile to host it. They'd obviously they could charge some money for that. So yeah, clubs could think about where they could do it as well. But it is a good idea to consider targeting through the Meet Mobile app, because it is a commonly used application by swimming parents. You mentioned bringing in school students, and we had Tom, which is which I was aware of. A lot of people in the Southern Inland region, a lot of kids are doing the Duke of Edinburgh program, and that's a great way to get them involved. So I guess the challenge for Tom and for everyone doing this is how to keep them involved from there. So and that's pretty much what we've got at the moment. But yeah, Tom, I'd love to. I don't know if you've got any data on. I mean, I know you've got a lot of people who have done the timekeeper and chief timekeeper course. I'd be curious on the ratio of how many come through and continue on. So to
Josh,
see how effective.
Josh, not really many at the moment, but as Darryl mentioned before, with regards to schools, they love this whole our online thing because the lessons are already prepared. There is an assessment criteria, and the assessment is done by people external to the school. So, and then the teachers then use it as a marking criteria, and in their assessments for ones doing pass and other sport-related activities. But all these kids are doing pass in those subjects because they're all heavily into other sports. We can't quite bring them across to officiating at swimming.
Okay.
And that's why, Tom, I sort of mentioned if we could mimic fun events type situation, and then we have starters hitting the buzzer, then we've got people dropping lines for false starts, or we deliberately go up to a kid and go, we want you to false start. So we put the fun back into it a bit. One reason why my son left swimming was that he couldn't talk to his mates during the event, because every time he stopped at one end of the pool to talk to a mate who was doing a turn, his coach belted him on his coach slightly tipped him on the top of the head, but it wasn't slight in those days. So I think it's got to be the fun into swimming, whereby we can then bring the fun into technical officiating. And again, it's a technical sport, your sport. But I think we've got to start thinking laterally, and also about the generational change that we're on the cusp of at the moment. And yeah, the Duke of Edinburgh Awards are fantastic, and any other type of self-directed study that schools are now being really open about is where we can come in. But again, you're competing with the other sports, as Tom said. And that's why the product has to be different, has to be engaging, and it has to be fun when it comes to working with younger people. Okay. All right, let's have a talk about local tertiary institutions and placements. Again, a lot of you are sitting there going, this sounds like bloody hard work. And it is. It is. It's about door knocking. It's about setting up partnerships and relationships. It's a lot easier if you've got contacts in these areas. So with tertiary institutions, and I'm talking everything from registered training organisations through to TAFE, through to universities, there are certain courses that are required to have placements and internships in organisations. I would class your club as an organisation. I presently have an intern working with me for 250 hours he has to do, and he is creating an assessment app for us to assess our technical officials. And he's doing it on Android, and he's doing it on iOS platforms. So that's 250 hours of someone developing an app. So he's not even sport background. Developing an app to assist us to deliver our refereeing assessment better, or our officiating better. So in light of that, there may be institutions that require their students to have placements and internships of X number of hours to successfully meet the requirements of the course. Some of that's in sports management, some of that's in sports coaching, some of that is in exercise physiology. And I think that that's an area where we can tap into, where people will actually come out of a tertiary institution with some form of technical officiating accreditation from Swimming Australia. And again, we're not looking at massive numbers, but what we're looking at doing is chipping away sort of one recruitment step at a time. So it's important that if there's tertiary institutions in your local areas, that they may have specific courses where pracs, inverted commas, have to be done. And that could be one area where you can engage. Because number one, it's a bit cause and effect. We can supply you X number of hours to achieve accreditation so that you can be signed off for this particular course at your institution. Right, there's also the ex-swimmers' involvement as technical officials. But how do we get to the ex-swimmer before they actually leave the sport in its totality? And as I said, this is where we've got to have discussions with our local coaches. Who is on the pathway? Who is going to make it? Who's not on the pathway? Who wants to be on the pathway? It's not going to make it. So we can't afford to lose them from the sport completely. So what we have to do is we have to have more communication with coaches, and then also have a very, and I'd get the coaches to have the chat going, here are your options. Number one, you can go into coaching. Number two, you can become a technical official, and you can still represent your country in both those areas as a technical official and also as a coach. And get the actual coach to talk about, well, I think you're better suited to being a technical official rather than a coach, for whatever the reasons may be. So we have to start sort of having dialogue with coaches around the country about looking for people, because the majority of people that become technical officials are involved in the sport either through their kids or themselves. When we start looking at these tertiary institutions, these are people possibly outside. But somehow we've got to get to the sweet spot when it comes to ex-swimmers or swimmers transitioning out, where we can grab them and turn around and go, look, you're going to make a really good technical official. You're an ex-swimmer. Probably one of the best examples was Paul Rifle in cricket, where he was an Australian player, was transitioning out of cricket, and Cricket Australia was able to grab him and go, try this. Now that can happen at all levels of the sport. All levels of the sport. The last strategy, or one of this strategy I've got here, is what I call the Maccas and Uber strategy. And this is what the NRL was looking at just before COVID, where they were looking at paying young referees the equivalent to their shift rates at Maccas, or close to it, or the Uber strategy. So what happens is, and again, this is not a big part of your sport, and it hasn't been, but it may have to in the future, where we start paying people hourly rates for students as hobbyists during events. So they rearrange their shifts from McDonald's or driving an Uber. And for that particular event, they're actually getting an hourly rate better than what the Maccas or Uber would be paying them, depending on their age. A lot of people turn around and go, well, that's not our sport. Well, we may have to move into that. We may have to move into that. So it's better to start flagging it now. We pay our referees, so our youngest introduction referee who is shadowing someone running up and down beside them gets paid $4 a game. And that's just to run up and down and then start making a couple of calls. So we may be moving into a user pay system more, where our technical officials are given more than a stipend. And that's sort of where people are going now. And especially generational, what do we get for the time that we've put in? What are we getting? In the past, people would say, well, you're getting education, you're getting training, you're getting sense of community. And they go, yeah, so how much am I getting? And there's a change in volunteerism when we're looking at the next generation coming through. So how do we start selling this to people? What's our selling? What's our marketing? I think the best thing is we offer flexible technical official time commitments. And I'll stress a slide in just a moment. And it's the way you approach people. You've got to be specific in the tasks required by TOs or the people you're approaching. So you have to be very specific in what tasks and how often they occur or may occur. You've got to offer support and training for people volunteering as a technical official. So we've got to have this already in what I call a toolkit. So if anyone asks you a question, you go, oh, well, if you'd like to read this or if you'd like to go to that website, that'll explain it even more. I can talk to you about it. But we've got to have a number of tools in our toolkit so that when people ask us questions, we know that we're organised. We know what the amount of time people are required to do or the amount of time we can split between people. We've got to be able to tell them about, their investment in the social capital of society in that particular area. We've got to talk about their rate of pay per hour if we get to that point. So we've got to offer support and training for people volunteering as technical officials. We've got to highlight the impact of these people being technical officials. What impact do technical officials have? Well, first of all, in any sport, officials dictate the standard of competition. Now, whether that's at community level, whether that's at international level, technical officials, any official sets the standard. Okay, sets the standard. It also assists in the development of their children or the guardianship they may have in developing their own children. Okay. There has to be some features on social media. You have to recruit through your current clubs, friends, and networks, and some of these strategies that I've talked about engaging people outside of those areas. One important thing is that I've always connected with and tried to do is immediate recognition. So as soon as someone turns around and goes, yes, I'm interested, there's some form of immediate recognition of, okay, there's a course next week, or go online and start doing that. And once that's finished, we're going to get a shirt to you straight away. So there's training and a shirt, and then we can get you straight on into an officiating environment. And to me, that's immediate recognition. And that also works with principal educators or facilitators, assessors, mentors, etc. There's something tangible for me saying yes straight away, rather than, okay, I'll get back to you in 4 weeks. The moment's gone. The moment's gone at that particular time. Okay, so this is what I was talking about, time. Instead of saying, if they turn around and go, okay, I'm interested in being a technical official, how much time is required? I think the response is, how much time do you have to contribute? I did that strategy this year as a coach. So I had a coach that couldn't come to training on Monday, but could come to the game on Wednesday. I then had another coach that could come to training on Monday, but couldn't get to the game on Wednesday. And then I had 2 coaches available on Thursday. So we started going into part-time coaches, really. So to support the program, we had people contributing what they could contribute to the program, with me being the anchor. So if you were to turn around and say, how much time do you have to offer as a technical official? We can work around that, given that your contribution is important. And that's a little bit different way of selling the concept of becoming a technical official. How much time do you have to contribute? And again, that's one of the tools in your toolkit. Also, with this recruitment, you'll find that some people will begin at their local level. You've recruited them, you're working with them, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, well, this is not too bad. And then all of a sudden there's an opportunity to go to the regional. There may be opportunity to go to state. And all of a sudden we've got this participation pathway that this person was basically investing in the local community through your recruitment process. But now they want to start going on performance pathways. They want to come to Canberra and do a short course. They want to do different things. So you've got to be able to support them, but also offer them the pathways. And there's multiple entry and exit points. So you may wish to stay in your community and do a couple of things in a performance pathway, or you might want to do one thing in performance pathway and then come back to local community and just involve themselves in local community. But then all of a sudden another opportunity comes up in 12 months' time because people aren't available or people aren't feeling well. And then all of a sudden you come in and out. So there doesn't have to be a specific event after event after event after event within the performance pathway, because it comes down to what's happening in people's lives, as we all know, and basically what happens with the allocated time. So you might have someone that's been in the participation area, as I call it, and involved in club for years and years and years. The kids are now growing up, and this is a story with a lot of technical officials that I've spoken to. They've stuck with the sport. The kids are off now. They're in their late teens, early 20s, or even late 20s. And the people that are there going, I really like this community. I want to start now, looking at a performance pathway. Because what we have to do is we have to be able to recruit people and be able to be flexible enough to deal with where they are in their life at that particular moment in time. And then offer them a calendar of commitments. So calendar of commitments or a calendar of events based on the times that they have said that they can help. And again, people are sitting there going, this is a lot of work. Can't I just ask people? Yes, but people are becoming more inquisitive about things like this, and they want immediate answers. Because with the immediacy of those answers reflects organisation and structure straight up. And I've always said over the years, over many, many years, before everyone started registering in sport online, the registrar was always the first contact in many, many sports. The person registering people going into teams or going into events. Now it's the coaches. And in your case, it's you, the technical official, is the face of technical officiating within your areas. Somewhere in your toolkit, you've always got to mention that there is support. This is a quick diagram that again we devised last year about the learner official in the middle there, and what support do they have going forward. Now that's at a national level. Basically, what I'm saying here is that we have facilitators of information at the local level. We may have some mentors, but then also we have the entire technical officiating community. So at a local area, we've got facilitators that can help with ongoing knowledge in their roles. We may set up a mentoring program, whether it be formal or informal, whether it be event-based or whether it be over a longer period of time. But ultimately, we've got to show that you just don't become a technical official. You go out there and you're on your own for the next 8 years or 10 years or 20 years or 3 months because you don't feel like you're supported. So just remember that we have to reinforce support over and over again when we're talking with people that we want to come on board with, or people that want to come on board with us. Always like this picture of John Kempy. We always had a bit of a smile when I put this up on slides. So the retention issue is very similar to what we were talking about just in the previous slide. We've got to be able to offer pathways. We've got to have some form of recognition and appreciation within the swimming community, not just the technical officials community. It's got to be more than just a technical officials community. It's got to be the wider swimming community in your regions, in your areas. The engagement comes from the continuing education and development opportunities based on those facilitators, the mentors, and the assessors that are there. So that's part of our continuing education, and also appointments to events. You know, people that first come in, you're not going to say, oh, we're going to throw you straight in. You're actually going to be shadowing someone. So you've got a process to offer people. There may be dollars involved. There's definitely social opportunities. I've actually seen some social opportunities at a national level after the meets, the evening meets, and you have to make it fun. It has to be fun for people to be involved in it. It has to be a certain amount of fun, and that's why people do it. They do it to invest. That's why you do it. You do it for an investment into the development of officials within swimming, but it has to be fun when you're with your peers, when you're having a chat or a debrief over one bottle of red. I said one bottle of red. That's what it's all about. Okay, this is our last one, Josh. I thought you were looking at your watch.
All good.
The recruitment's going to change. There's our advanced technologies arrived in swimming. Okay, it was being used at the Jewel in the Pool. I was out at that. This future, and again, it's not going to happen next year, but it's on its way. So it's going to reduce the demands on people's time as technical officials. So there will be smaller numbers of technical officials required per event. So that means we're now addressing the issue of burnout or people overcommitting. Hawkeye is presently looking at portable units for clubs, and that's presently being developed and trialled. So portable units that could be taken around the country or installed in council swimming pools. And that's being trialled now as we speak. FINA is also looking at various propositions for various levels of competition at an international level. So this one is basically looking at Hawkeye taking up some of the responsibility of the technical officials, not taking the whole responsibility away, but taking some of the responsibilities. So what we will be having is a new skill set merging with an existing skill set to officiate into the future. Now, whether you agree with that or not, FINA is looking very seriously at it as the way forward from an international level to national level. And then Swimming Victoria is looking at that and how it can assist in Victoria with these portable units. And they're doing their best to try and get it to an affordable rate. Now, Josh, you were up at the Jewel in the Pool, and they were experimenting with this technology, and technical officials using the technology to the side as well. So that's sort of where we're going forward, in the sense that there will still be recruitment of technical officials. This will happen nationally a lot quicker than it's going to happen at local level, but we'll also be looking at a different skill set that really works in with the generation that's coming through, where a lot of screen-based activity is continuously used by, what are we up to? Z or Alpha generation now, I think, where a lot of screen-based activity is happening. And this in itself may begin to attract a new form of technical official coming into the sport. So that's me at the moment, Josh. Quite happy for questions, comments, statements, ideas that other people have.
Yeah, if you have anything to say, please, guys, unmute yourself. In the meantime, I thought it was really some of the things that you mentioned earlier about recruitment and all the just some things that I, from a, I'm not part of a club myself, so some things that I hadn't thought of, and so I thought I'd just hijack the presentation with a quick little poll that I created. I wanted to see if other people, I might just post the poll rather than ask the question, if that's all right, Darryl.
Sure, mate. No, it's over to you now. Do you want me to stop sharing?
No, that's fine. The poll should come up now anyway, but you can stop sharing if you'd like. So this was more just about, and people will be able to answer now. It's more about, just had you considered some outside approaches before? So, recruiting people from outside the swimming community. And there's a lot of things that I hadn't thought of before, not being part of a club or anything. It may be tougher, but I certainly hadn't thought of a lot of these things, which is, it was good to hear these ideas. I can see that at the moment we've had 12 people respond. I don't know if anyone else can see these. I think it's just me that can see the statistic. 14 people have responded, and 13 have said that they hadn't actually tried any of these approaches before. So it's a good sign, really, that there's people are learning new ways to try and recruit officials.
Yeah, I think that the bottom line is that the traditional ways in which we've done it in the past have to evolve. Not saying that they were wrong, but society is evolving. I was talking about even looking at society now, where we've got new words that have never been used a lot, around the COVID and Trump era, like fake news. I didn't hear much about fake news until Trump came on. We talk about, everything to do with COVID-19. The world is changing, and I think expectations of people are changing. We've got to try and evolve with it, because everyone turns around and goes, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. Well, tell us how much time you do have, and we can tailor make your contribution to the sport as a technical official based on what you have got.
That's right. Yeah, I think clubs, areas, state, national alike, they will all, if you say this is how much time I've got, they're going to accommodate you rather than just not taking you on at all. So it's very true.
And it's hard work. It's door knocking. It's setting networks up. It's trying to use your local network in your environments.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like these are good. These were a lot of good ideas for clubs officials and club committee members alike to take back to their clubs. And it's, Swimming New South Wales have always looked at ways to recruit officials. But I've personally always felt that it's more effective coming from the people at the grassroots level, at the club level, because you're the one that you're already an official, or you're already a club committee member, you're more relatable to those people than Swimming New South Wales is to those people, those outside people. So I think it's really important that if anyone can take on some of these ideas and maybe give them a try and keep us updated on how you go.
Any other comments, Josh, that anyone would like to make?
I've got one, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure,
Scott.
Scott. Yep.
I'm a technologist, so this is really my learnings and some consideration from you guys. If you look at how rugby leagues use the bunker and rugby union uses the TMO, and it starts to insert more time into the match, is FINA looking at how we make sure that doesn't happen in swimming?
The discussions with, and again, I'm just sitting on an advisory panel based on this. They're looking at doing it as close to real time as they can without delays or sponsorship opportunities. So they're looking at it quite quickly. If anything's seen, it's straight away. But there has been people ask that question. Yeah. And my question was, you're not going to use it for advertising, are you?
Yeah, I'm just more interested in the timeliness of getting meets done. Sometimes while officials are deciding stuff, there's a large delay. 4 or 5 events have gone by and then somebody gets told lane 8, incorrect stroke, disqualified. I'd hate to see that permeate swimming.
No, well, I think the object is to make it quicker, so things like what you just said doesn't happen. And probably one person turned around and no one could answer. What can you really see from the pool deck in lane 4? So that's what someone was saying and turning around saying this technology will assist. Again, it's not going to be the panacea. There still has to be a human element to it. They're not going straight from the human element straight to AI. There has to be a human element, as you said, in there, but it can't be as long as what the bunker does now and 27 angles and 47 replays.
And also the slow-mo, I think, that probably kills it, things in real time as opposed to slow motion. I know we've got the touchpads and the like. Yep.
So again, I don't know where this is going to end up, Scott, but there is definitely dialogue happening at a lot of different levels.
Thanks for that.
Yep.
And just to comment, another one from John, that was just directly to me, but at a state level, so where we've got state meets, often there is a break, as Scott mentions. John has suggested that, put up a video, promotional video there at the same time. Again, great idea. But again, how can clubs do that? Because they don't often have a big scoreboard where they can start putting up a video, before a club night or before an inter-club meet or that kind of thing. But these are all ideas that we take on board.
Yep. I mean, in my basketball stadium, I've got a promo about becoming a referee in the men's toilets, in the ladies' toilets, in the cubicles. It's everywhere you go. That's where we're at, and we've got TVs in the stadium as well. But you've got to get to that point where it's everywhere, both physically and virtually.
And just so our last comment that's come through from Vula, and Vula does hear that she hears people they prefer to officiate a sport that pays them. So, and again, that is understandable. It is it's just another challenge that we have to overcome, and it is a little easier in your ball sports or sports where there's might be 1, 2, or maybe a handful of referees or a handful of officials. on a day, whereas in swimming there's a lot more at the moment, and that's why payment is not really practical or possible at the moment.
And as I said, Josh, it's just it's talking about it, it's having the dialogue. Because sports that haven't had it in the past have now got it. So rugby union here in Canberra, referees are never paid, now they are. So it's got to come from somewhere in the system, whether it be the user pay of the actual swimmer, whether it be sponsorship. Again, it was just to start dialogue. I'm not saying you guys have to go down there, but
yes,
as was just mentioned, you're competing with other sports that are doing it.
Yep, that's right. I think that's it. Yes. So Sherry's made a good summary, I think, noting that the upcoming generations are more time poor than previous generations, and they're dollar driven. If these issues can be addressed, you'd be halfway there. So that's very true.
Yep.
That's the key. Is there anything that anyone else wants to mention, if they want to come off mute quickly before we wrap up? Otherwise, we'll leave it at that. Darryl, thank you very much for a really insightful presentation. It was exactly what we needed. So really appreciate it. And this can be spread towards amongst our TO community as well, and even beyond, because again, it's the clubs that can be talking as well, not just the officials to recruit, like officials, but it can be clubs that can go out and get the message out there and recruit as well. And then obviously hold on to them as well and use some of the strategies that you've suggested. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you everyone online. As I said, recruitment is just hard work. It's just hard work, but I think we're going to get to a point where we start thinking laterally. Good luck with the recruitment. Good luck with your own pathways. And we're getting very close to Christmas. So I hope you all have a good break, because it's just around the corner. Josh, if you could stay online, and thank you very much for all your time tonight and your invitation to facilitate tonight. So thanks for that, Josh. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.